Hey everyone, Ronin here, and welcome back to the channel. We got a lot to cover today, but first, let's shout out the patron, Jonathan Zergrius. Thank you very much for the support, and sorry if I butchered your name. But you guys, March was the best month that we had on YouTube ever, and I just want to say thank you for the continued support. It's really showing me that the channel is growing in the right direction, and you guys are enthusiastic about the content that I'm putting out. So please, take a look at these analytics right here, and don't forget to check out the subscribe versus the unsubscribe. And also, please, drop a comment and a like to help fuel the algorithm. And if you guys are new here, please don't forget to hit the subscribe and turn on notification button so that way you'll never miss another upload from the channel. And if you want to continue to support us further, consider becoming a channel member and a patron. You get exclusive access to content that I only post on those platforms, plus you also get early access to all the content I put out. So thank you very much for the continued support. But now let's get into What If I Wrote the Pokemon Anime Part 18. I hope you enjoy. We begin today's episode with Ash, Misty, and Brock as they're in the open ocean on the deck of a boat. Our trio set sail from Cinnabar Island a few days back and are on their way northbound to the southernmost tip of the CANT region as they are on their way to the next gym that just so happens to be in Viridian City. During this time, Brock, Ash, and Misty have gotten a chance to catch up, and the breeder has gotten a little bit more intimate with the Pokemon that have been caught in between the two, with Ash in particular with Charmeleon evolving, Nidorina evolving, and then his two new captures of Bulbasaur and Squirtle. And he's beginning to notice a dynamic between Bulbasaur and Charmeleon that seems to be an odd one. Whenever they're around each other, Bulbasaur seems to be agitated with Charmeleon, and it seems to be even more so when the Fire Lizard is just laying around, lounging, not really doing anything. Brock has begun to take notes on this as he finds it quite odd. He then inquires to Ash what was the means of Bulbasaur joining his team. Where did he catch it? To which Ash responds he thinks it's one that he ran into when he was at the Fuchsia Gym. However, he's not really sure why Bulbasaur followed him because he didn't catch it until much later. The grass toad just followed him for what sounded like weeks. And then after a battle that he had with Damien, Bulbasaur appeared to give Charmander a pep talk. The two seemed to hit it off really good, and then from that day forward, they were inseparable, like they were brothers or something. But their whole dynamic changed when Charmeleon evolved. This is where Brock says that could very well have something to do with it. Their camaraderie that Bulbasaur was feeling, and the reason why he wanted to be around Charmander may have shifted, as Charmeleon's personality has shifted as well. This worries Ash, but Brock tells him not to be too worried about it. While it is going to be a point of tension, and he's going to have to deal with it, it doesn't seem to be something that's going to cause any harm to anybody, as it's just a mood of agitation that only seems to be pursued by Bulbasaur, as it seems Charmeleon doesn't really care what the grass toad has to talk about. However, the one thing that Brock is concerned about is the dynamic between Pikachu and Nidorina, as ever since the poison type's evolution and its increase in size and power, it seems to think that it's its job to bully Pikachu whenever it gets the chance. And unfortunately, during this last encounter, it resulted in something that Nidorina wasn't liking, as when it was beginning to poke and prod at Pikachu and the electric mouse felt like it was backed into a corner as it wasn't on Ash's shoulder like it normally is, Pikachu let out a huge thunderbolt that shocked Nidorina into a paralysis. However, this wasn't an attack on Pikachu's part, merely a little bit of PTSD from all the times that it's been attacked in the past, and it was more of an unconscious defensive outlet that Pikachu had never really experienced before outside of a couple of instances with Ash. However, the entire group saw this, including Brock, and after Nidorina seemed to shake off the electricity that was coursing through its veins, began to grow super aggressive and proceeded to chase Pikachu around the entire ship until Brock told Ash that he should recall it before Nidorina causes any damage to it, Pikachu, or the ship itself, to which Ash was unfortunately forced to do. Meanwhile, his other two Pokemon, Butterfree and Squirtle, don't really have any trouble adapting to life with Ash. The two are just there to support the trainer, and Squirtle seems to be a little bit clingy to Ash, like it's afraid that it was going to leave his side fight or something, to which Brock notes this behavior as well. This is where Ash asks Brock why he's been writing things down so much, to which the Pokemon breeder says it's nothing that he needs to worry about as now. He's just trying to compile a couple of theories, and writing it all down helps him remember. This brings us over to Misty. While she hasn't caught a lot of Pokemon, there is one that sticks out, to which just so happens to be a golden Magikarp, to which Brock is a little bit intrigued by this. He's never seen a Magikarp this color before, even going as far to say that it might be painted on. However, Misty says that it's not. She even tried scrubbing it off of Magikarp, to which all she got was just scales. It's legit golden, to which the breeder is very enamored with. However, he reminds Misty that Gyarados is a very powerful Pokemon, and if Magikarp ever chooses to evolve, she might want to watch out for that. This immediately causes the redhead to tensen up, as she has a deep-rooted fear with Gyarados. However, this is something she's kept to herself and from her friends for the longest of times, to which she doesn't want to unveil quite yet, considering they've all just got back together and things have been on a happy note. The last thing she wants is someone to play psychiatrist with their head. However, Brock notices the stiffening and takes note of it as well, as he writes it down inside of what he's become to call his thesis book. Misty immediately sees him jotting away and screams at the breeder not to be writing anything about her in that book, to which Brock meekly replies that he's not. It's just for research purposes, so not to worry. He then closes it and puts it back in his bag as he pulls out the Pokemon egg. It's been rumbling around ever so slightly over the last couple of days, and the breeder is super excited to see what it is. However, he's not the only one that's excited, as Pikachu, Ash, and Misty all want to know exactly what's inside the egg. Considering up until this point, Ash and Misty didn't know that Pokemon came from eggs, but Brock explains they do. And while they're very rare to find in the wild, it does happen from time to time. Most of the time, when Pokemon have their eggs in the wild, they go through great lengths to hide them. But this one was the exception. He just found it laying out in the open, and he's not really sure how it got there, but he hopes whatever it is a Pokemon that's going to be happy and healthy, to which Ash and Misty both agree as the ship sails off, bound for the harbor just south of Pallet Town. It takes a couple more days, but eventually our group is able to make landfall, and they make quick work heading for Ash's hometown, and by sunset of that same day, they find themselves just at the top of the hill that looks down into the sleepy little valley town, to which Ash is super excited, immediately taking off as he can see his house in the distance. This causes Pikachu, Brock, and Misty to tell Ash to wait up, as with his new motivation to get home, the boy is faster than they've ever seen him. But it doesn't take long for Ash to open the front door of the house, only to see his mom standing in the kitchen. She's super excited to see her son, as Ash didn't tell her that he was coming by. However, Delia is still doing what she does best. She's hard at work, cooking a meal as if she was feeding 5 to 6 people, to which immediately causes Ash to question this. However, he's gonna be interrupted a bit by Brock when he walks in to take note to what Delia is doing, and for the former gym leader to look over Ash's mom and beginning to feel a certain way. However, this is his best friend's mother, so he would never dare to do something like that. But this thought for Brock is interrupted as Ash begins to introduce his 2 friends to him, to which Delia is happy to have them, telling them she hopes they're hungry, as she made a lot of food, and they're gonna have a special guest tonight, to which Ash immediately begins to inquire who. But before he can say anything, the door begins to open on the house as he hears a voice announcing that he has arrived, to which Ash and everybody turn to see none other than Professor Oak. The professor is surprised to see Ash. He wasn't expecting the boy, as he didn't call ahead. However, this gives him a chance to catch up with one of Pallet's greatest trainers that are currently in training, quote unquote, to which Ash immediately gets excited, wanting to show Professor Oak all of his Pokemon. However, Delia immediately puts a stop to this, stating that there will be plenty of time for that after dinner. Right now, they need to eat because the meal is ready, to which she stands aside to reveal a table full of different foods that she has been working all the day on, which causes Ash to lose sight of his previous thought as his stomach begins to growl, and him and Pikachu hop into a chair and begin to dig in before anybody has a chance to even say thank you. This immediately causes both Misty and Brock to sigh, as with Ash, nothing ever changes. The boy thinks about his stomach before anything. However, Pikachu is a direct reflection of its trainer, so they can't do anything besides join their friend, as Delia and Professor Oak sit down as well. Later that night, after everyone's eaten and they've had a chance to let their meals digest, digest, Ash and Pikachu are asleep in his room. It's the first time the electric mouse has actually seen Ash's bedroom, and it takes it all in, getting to know its trainer's personal side from home for the first time in their entire relationship. Ash comments to Pikachu that he used to lie awake in bed every night thinking about the day that he would get a chance to meet his first Pokemon, and he also used to think about the times that he would get to lie in the bed with his first Pokemon. And now he's here. Him and Pikachu, they get to share this moment together. The boy looks at the electric mouse as they're both slowly nodding off. Ash states that he's going to do the best he can. He wants them to be as strong as they possibly can together, and they want to continue to grow together. And no matter what happens, he will always be there to support Pikachu. The electric mouse gives a brief pika before they both fade off into snooze land. As the night continues on, fading into the wee hours of the morning before a Dodrio caws at the top of the hill that is Pallet Town. This causes everyone to get their early rise, as Ash and Pikachu are still in the process of sleeping in, considering this is a habit that neither Ash or Pikachu have ever been able to break, even when they're out on the road. But Misty and Brock are not exactly like their 10-year-old friend, as they are up bright and early, getting everything ready. It's here that the two enter the kitchen, to where Brock was considering making a big breakfast so that way everyone can get the right start to the day. But Delia was up before anyone, before even the caw of the Dodrio, as she has already made breakfast and the table is as full as it was the night before. No wonder Ash is the way he is, Misty thinks to herself. He always ate good, and he had the support of his mom, unlike the support I got from my family. To where, on the other hand, Brock has the exact opposite feeling, as it seems like Ash has a good support system. It reminds him of the support he used to provide for his brothers and sisters, until his deadbeat dad decided to come back, that is. However, the boy can't think about that now, as he asks Delia where Ash is, but she says that she wants them to let him sleep a little while longer. This meal was actually for the two. She wanted to thank them for taking care of her son while he's out on the road. She knows that Ash can be a bit hot-headed sometimes, and he can be a bit difficult to handle. However, it seems like they've been very good friends to the boy. This causes both Misty and Brock to blush a little bit, as they didn't expect this, but nonetheless, they accept the meal as a thank you for all the work that they did with Ash. As they begin to finish things up, we flash over to Professor Oak's lab, as the old man is preparing for the events of the day. You see, Oak has been having a problem on his ranch as of late. There are so many Pokemon that live here that it's hard to keep track of what's wild and what belongs to actual trainers, and as a result, some Pokemon end up wandering onto his property that call the place home, but they don't actually belong to anyone, which he doesn't have a problem with. But there is one other issue that could be said here. There is something that's been making issues around his entire property over the last couple of weeks. It's causing both the captured Pokemon and the wild Pokemon to become uneasy, and Oak has been having trouble sleeping at night. That's the reason why he was over at Ash's house, because like it or not, Oak has been staying at Ash's house with Delia in one of their guest bedrooms, so that way he can actually get some good night's sleep, so that way he can continue his research in the morning. But last night, because Misty and Brock were there, he was forced to sleep in his own bed, which the old professor didn't get a wink, and this is causing him to be a bit on edge. And over the next couple of hours, he spends time looking for any signs of this problematic Pokemon that has been causing the chaos in his ranch, but it's to no avail. And it even leads into the time when Ash, Pikachu, Misty, and Brock finally make their way to the old ranch. However, they're going to be greeted with a very on-edge Professor Oak, as he's a little bit high-strung due to his lack of sleep and being wired on caffeine. However, no matter how he's feeling, the fact of the matter is, the reason why Ash is here is because the professor wants to get a chance to see Ash's Pokemon, to which the boy happily does, releasing all of them from their Pokeballs, and all of their wild personalities, including the fact that Charmeleon and Bulbasaur still seem to be having an issue with each other, as Bulbasaur begins to berate Charmeleon for just lazily laying about once again. This immediately catches Professor Oak's attention, as he's never quite seen the dynamic like that between a fire and a grass type before. However, he supposed it's something that could be one that is to take root, considering they spend a lot of time together. Ash goes on to explain everything he knows about Bulbasaur and Charmeleon, and he explains that this was the Charmander that Damien got the day that he left Pallet Town. Ah, that's why it looks familiar, Professor Oak says. Well, it seems like it's really grown under your tutelage, Ash. It's a shame that Damien couldn't bring out its true potential, to which Ash responds, bring out its potential. No, he straight out abandoned Charmander on a rock, to which causes Professor Oak's stomach to churn a little bit. I see, I didn't think he would be that kind of trainer. Although Damien was always the most selfish of you kids. oh well, at least Charmander found its way to a trainer that cares about it. Even though the fire lizard doesn't seem to share the same sentiment at this current time, Oak says, as Charmeleon is looking at them through one eye before it lazily goes back to lounging, while Bulbasaur berates it for being, well, so lazy. But this brings us to the other aggressor on Ash's team, the Nidorina. This is something that Professor Oak wanted to see, as there is a surprise here. Gary had told Professor Oak about how Ash had beat him in the chance to catch a Nidorina, so he wanted to get a chance to see this Pokemon for himself. However, that's not the surprise, as the Pokemon that Gary tried to use to capture Nidorina back when it was a Nidoran is actually here at the lab, and it's a fully evolved Nidoking. And it's here that we see the third stage poison type walking up with hearts in its eyes as it's trying to approach Nidoran while it's bullying Pikachu, which has Professor Oak's full attention as he's curious to why Nidoran has such an issue with the electric mouse. But as Ash is trying to explain it, this is when Nidoking makes his appearance known, trying to persuade Nidorina to be its girlfriend. However, it strikes out when Nidorina chooses to just ignore the third stage, choosing to berate Pikachu and try to cause it as much discomfort as possible. But Nidoking isn't going to take this lying down, and it's going to continue to try this. But unfortunately for it, Nidorina isn't one to play around. As Nidoking tries to make another move on the poison type, the second stage is easily to launch a double kick straight into the gut of Nidoking, dropping it before Nidorina looks at it and then simply throws a look up to the sky with its eyes closed, almost saying it's not good enough for her, before it decides that it's tired of this entire interaction and walks off to a different part of the ranch to get a little bit of privacy away from its adoring fan. Oak finds this fascinating. However, there is one thing that he wants to point out to Ash, as they see a bunch of Pokemon in the surrounding fields around them. You see all of that, Ash? Believe it or not, those Pokemon only belong to one trainer. This immediately causes Ash's stomach to turn with a knot, as there's an answer he's afraid that Oak is going to say, to which he wastes no time stating that Gary has caught over 90 different Pokemon, and all of them that Ash can see within the distance belong to him. This immediately gets Ash to hang his head, as he was thinking that him and Gary were relatively on the same level, but this just reaffirms that he's nowhere near his rival, and Oak is going to drive this home a little bit harder when he states that Gary also has 7 badges, to which Ash only has 5. This immediately causes the boy to begin to panic. With only one more, Gary can get into the league, no problem, and Ash will be left behind. This causes Ash to begin to become frantic as he begins to look around, gathering up his Pokemon, stating that they have to leave now. They need to get to Viridian City so that way he can close the gap between him and Gary. But this causes Oak and Misty and Brock to tell him to calm down. They don't need to leave just yet. There's still plenty of time until the Pokemon League. Ash has about 4.5 months until it's going to start, so the boy's got plenty of time to get the last 3 badges that he needs, and more importantly, catch some new Pokemon, because if Ash doesn't, he's not going to be able to rely on the same 6 all the time. Something's going to come up to where he's going to wish that he had more variety to choose when he has to actually battle in the league. However, Ash begins to say something, but this is interrupted by a bunch of crying and yells that are heard from out within the field. All of a sudden, they watch as all of Gary's Pokemon become frantic as they begin to panic, running around causing a stampede. This is immediate cause for concern, as Oak knows that the cause of his lack of sleep as of late is out there. The professor immediately takes off running with Ash, Misty, and Brock in tow, telling the professor to wait up, but the old man says nothing as the group heads into the herd that is now stampeding around at the edge of the property. With everyone in tow, they quickly find themselves in the middle of the bustling herd as all of the Pokemon are trampling about. Something has spooked them, and Ash, Professor Oak, Misty, and Brock can't quite tell what it is. However, there's going to be one Pokemon here that does not take too kindly to this, and that's Ash's Bulbasaur. It doesn't like complete chaos, and it immediately begins to start unleashing Vine Whips and Razor Leaves to try and calm the situation down. Believe it or not, this is quite effective, much to the surprise of Professor Oak and the rest of the Pokemon. However, there's one among the crowd that doesn't like this, and it's going to take drastic measures, unleashing a burst of psychic energy that begins to rile everything up again, just as Bulbasaur had begun to calm everything down. This causes the stampede to begin to flail about even worse than before. It's getting to the point to where even the humans are going to be trampled if they're not too careful. Luckily, Brock has a solution to this, as he sends in his Onix, and using its overwhelming size, he's able to use it and Bulbasaur to corral the Pokemon into a smaller area so that way they can kind of calm down without causing any serious harm to anybody else. But as this is happening, something is revealed revealed as there's a Pokemon standing dead in the middle of the field that seems to be teleporting around. Professor Oak spots this out of the corner of his eye, telling Ash that that's it. That's what he keeps seeing, that flash of light. However, at first, Ash, Misty, and Brock don't see anything, and they think he's crazy. But there's one among them that has spotted, and that's Bulbasaur. It doesn't take too kindly to this entire turn of events, so it's going to engage with this mysterious visitor as it begins to launch Razor Leafs and Vine Whips. At first, they don't really hit anything, which leads everybody to believe that even Bulbasaur is seeing things. That is, until one of the Razor Leafs finally makes contact, causing a brief cry to ring out before something mysterious appears out of nowhere. It's a Pokemon that's clad in a pink and an even darker pink. It looks kind of like a clown, Ash says. However, that's no clown, Professor Oak reiterates. That's a Mr. Mime, but nobody on his ranch owns one. That's the thing that's been causing so much trouble, to which Mr. Mime immediately begins to chuckle to itself as it lets out another burst of psychic energy before throwing up some barriers to try and cause confusion among all the Pokemon that Onix has corralled. But luckily, the Rock Snake's size and strength is able to subdue most of them, preventing any serious damage to anything. However, this is going to cause an issue with Bulbasaur, as it doesn't like the attitude of this thing. It's just bent on causing as much chaos and mayhem as possible, and the grass type begins to engage with Mr. Mime as it launches another barrage of Razor Leafs and Vine Whips in an attempt to try and stop it. But Mr. Mime's psychic powers prove to be a little bit too much for the little grass starter, as it's able to easily overpower Bulbasaur, sending Cream into a tree with one simple confusion attack. This is where Ash steps forward. Bulbasaur, let's work together. To which the grass starter stands back up on all fours, letting out a brief Bulba before engaging back in battle. Ash immediately calls for a tackle attack, to which Bulbasaur puts everything it has into launching at this Mr. Mime, but the crafty psychic type easily puts up a barrier to try and block Bulbasaur. But this is exactly what Ash was looking for, as he commands the grass type to use its Vine Whip and sneak its way around the barrier that was erected so that way it can secure Mr. Mime. And doing so, Bulbasaur uses the force of its vines to slam Mr. Mime into its own barrier, causing the psychic type to become a little bit woozy as it hit head first. This is the opening that Ash was waiting for. As the barrier shatters, he calls for Bulbasaur to use a sleep powder, to which Bulbasaur easily executes, peppering the psychic type with the move, sending it off to Lala Land. Then, with the echoes of what Professor Oak told him about Gary catching all of those Pokemon ringing in his ear, Ash readies a Pokeball and throws it at Mr. Mime, who's snoozing away on the ground, still wrapped in Bulbasaur's vines. Luckily, it doesn't take a lot, as the ball, after 3 shakes, secures Ash's 7th capture of his Pokemon journey. The boy can't believe it. He did it. He actually captured another Pokemon. It's been so long since he did it. However, this is going to be interrupted by Delia, as she was coming by to bring some lunch for everybody, and she immediately scolds Ash for what she had done to that Mr. Mime. She demands that he release it from the ball at once, to which Ash is completely dumbfounded. He tries to explain that it was attacking everybody and causing a little bit of mischief, but Delia saw the entire thing. As far as she's concerned, it was just looking to have a good time. It didn't cause any harm to anybody, so she commands that he let it out of the ball this instant, to which Ash, without hesitation, does, to which Mr. Mime pops, a little bit groggy, but as soon as he sees Bulbasaur standing next to Ash, it feigns fear like it's scared of the two and runs behind Delia to try and use it as a shield. See, this is what I mean. You were too aggressive with him. You need to ease up. Pokemon battles should not be so brutal. This just leaves Ash, Misty, Brock, and Bulbasaur dumbfounded. They can't believe what Delia is saying. However, Ash's mom will not be argued with, as she tells the boy that he's not going to be allowed to use Mimey on his journey. Not after the way he treated him. Mimey, Ash says, confused. That's right, Mimey. That's what I've nicknamed it. Now, even though it's your Pokemon, he's going to be coming with me back to the house, so that way I can show him exactly how it can be treated. Delia then walks off, a bit frustrated with her son, while Ash is just standing there, completely dumbstruck over the whole situation. However, the one person in the world he's not going to argue with is his mom, and even though he got a new capture, that doesn't mean that it's his from what it looks like. But that's the least of their worries, as Professor Oak is finally glad to have everything settled down, and he can actually get a good night's sleep in his own bed. But this just leaves our heroes, as their next stop is going to be Viridian City. Once Ash gets over the shock of the Pokemon Pokemon that he caught that's not really his. And this is where we are going to leave things for now. So tell me, how did you guys feel about this part? What did you think about Ash's newest capture and the way it went down, and how he was just confiscated from Ash like that by his mom? Do you think he's ever going to actually get the chance to use his Mr. Mime, or is it going to forever be in the servitude of Delia? How about Professor Oak and the fact that he revealed that Gary is so far ahead of Ash? One more badge, and Gary's going to be done with the league. What does that mean for Ash? Is he actually going to have enough time to get the remaining 3 badges that he needs and enter the Pokemon League? Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Alright trainers, time to get your Pokédexes ready, because today we met Sandshrew, Paris, Diglett, Graveler, Magnemite, Krabby, Mr. Mime, and Dodrio.